Today's gonna be hell.
Hello out there, folks. It's Dave from Davestation VR, and today we're talking about a game called Creed Rise to Glory for PSVR. Now, you may be able to tell this is a boxing simulator that's based on the Creed movie franchise, or Rocky if that's what you're into, and it features real characters from the films. You've got Adonis Creed, you've got Rocky Balboa, all kinds of other guys as playable fighters. It's split up into a few modes. There's a campaign mode that's a single player, and it's got kind of a story-based thing going on that revolves around the events of the first Creed movie. So you are Adonis Creed, and you're preparing to battle Pretty Ricky Conlon. So you'll see a lot of environments and characters that you're used to from that first movie, and it follows a lot of the same beats, although it's really stripped down. There's also a free play mode where you can just go in and pick a player, pick an opponent, and just hop in. There's training exercises in the gym that are actually surprisingly fun. And, big one, there's going to be PvP. So the chance to be able to play a game like this online against your friends or random people in lobbies is potentially a huge benefit for this game, but in its current form, it's not all the way there yet, as far as I'm concerned. But I will talk more about that later in the video. So with all that out of the way, let's get into the nitty-gritty. I want to start with tracking and controls. This game is going to be played with the Move controllers only, of course, since it's a boxing game. And for the most part, the tracking feels really good. It seems to properly detect the strength of your punch and the location of your hands when you're blocking. And overall, I didn't really have many issues with that. Now, the movement system, getting around the ring, is lifted exactly from Sprint Vector, which is a previous game by the same developer, Survios. But it feels really odd in this context, and it could be better for this game. Basically, you're going to have to lower your guard and hold both move buttons and swing your hands to get around. And that works for the most part when you're trying to run forward, but good luck moving backwards. The game wants you to put your hands completely behind your body and then do the same run motion to get backwards movement. And it's really just unreliable, it's hard to do. And, I mean, in real boxing, if you're moving backwards slightly, you don't have to lower your guard completely and put your hands behind your back. So it kind of takes you out of it, and more often than not, it would misread my inputs there, and I'd end up running forwards just a few steps and be inside the guy that I was fighting. Ended up taking a bunch of body hits, so it's not great. They could use a little bit of a tweak there, or maybe some alternative modes of moving around. Now, there is an advanced movement mode, but that is going to be confusing for most players, and I would say even with the issues I mentioned, you probably want to stick with the standard movement. Beyond that, there are very minimal button presses required. You pretty much just swing and block with your hands, and that's pretty much it. There is click turning available, and you can also press a button to aim towards your opponent, but for the most part, you're just going to be putting your hands up in front of your face and then waiting for an opening and, punching. I will say it also does a pretty good job of tracking your dodges, so a lot of times when you have an incoming power move, you're going to want to dodge instead of blocking. And that seems to work really well, as far as I can tell. As far as gameplay goes, I found most of the fights to be really exhilarating. You're constantly moving around to dodge and block and take advantage of openings, and you really got to put some muscle into it. So it can be pretty strenuous, but it does feel like a workout, and it feels way more like real boxing than something like Knockout League. One thing that I think is going to be a big difficulty curve at the beginning for most people is the way that they do the stamina meter in this game. After just a few punches, your character starts to get exhausted, and you have to keep your hands still for 3 seconds to recover. Now, technically you can do that while you're blocking as well, but I found that I couldn't really tell if it thought I was being totally still when I was doing that. So it's sometimes hard to regain your stamina. And after you take too many hits, your hands start floating away from the gloves, and then you have to put them back in place to regain control. One thing that I thought was very strange was the AI opponents don't seem to be subject to the rules of stamina at all. They just constantly wail on you, no time needed to recover, they don't seem to ever get tired, which is kind of frustrating when you've got a few punches to get in, and then you got to go back to blocking for, a good few seconds. Whereas the enemy can just wail on you with no repercussions. So in PvP that shouldn't be as much of an issue, but I think in the campaign it kind of frustrates. Along those lines, any difficulty above the rookie setting, the easiest setting, can be really difficult. It's very trying to get through some of those fights on the harder difficulties. And even on Ricky, it doesn't seem totally balanced. The enemies aren't less aggressive or anything like that. You just have kind of more leeway for winning or losing. and there were times when I was getting my ass handed to me, but somehow I still won, and it just didn't seem fair. So it doesn't seem as much like the difficulty of the opponent goes down that much. It's just more like you're more resilient, and there's a lower margin for winning the game. So I think they could probably tweak the difficulties a little bit to, not make it seem so unfair that you're getting your ass handed to you and you still win. So as I was starting to record this review, the PvP mode was still not available, but as I was in the process, it got added in a patch, and I got a chance to test it out before launch. And I gotta say, for the mode that was my most anticipated before launch, I'm really kind of disappointed with the current state of the PvP. Now, matchmaking works great, selecting your characters, selecting the stage you want to play in, all that just works fine. But the defensive system, the blocking mechanics, are totally different than what you're used to in the campaign, and they feel pretty broken. I was testing it out with Brian from Without Parole Games, and we verified that currently at launch with this current patch, you can put your hand up to block directly in front of your face, and the enemy's fist can pass right through that and still connect and make a hit. And that really doesn't happen in the campaign mode. I wonder if it's kind of a limitation of tracking in real time, something that's not a scripted event from an AI. But it really just feels like it descends into this battle of who can be the most aggressive and just wail on each other. Whereas the campaign teaches you to be thoughtful and defensive and wait for an opening and then take your shot. And that really just doesn't work in PvP. So that was pretty frustrating for me, and I hope that there's something they can do to get that patched up, because in its current form, it's just not living up to the excitement that I had for it. Overall, for this one, I would say if you're excited to hop in and test out an officially licensed, Rocky Creed boxing simulator, and you're not as interested in the online PvP mode, maybe you just want some kind of fitness game or something fun to play that feels like real boxing, in that case, I would definitely recommend it. I think it's pretty cool, and I had a good time with what was there. If you're all in for the PvP mode, then I think you might want to wait for a few patches, because as far as I'm concerned, it's not there yet, and it really just didn't live up to my expectations. Based on the rest of the game, it wasn't where it needed to be. That's going to wrap it up for my review of Creed Rise to Glory. Thank you so much for watching. As always, I appreciate you guys. And if you enjoyed this video, do me the whole YouTube thing and throw me a subscribe or a like or a comment. And have a good rest of your day. Thanks.